you all please be seated? Many of the impactful speeches I've heard hold a concrete place in my mind. Depending on the occasion, each set of wise words gets slotted in with another of similar intent. While majority of you may be imagining the iconic presidential inaugurations or the horrifyingly intense finals of the Senior One debating competition, I hold a different perception. The most memorable speeches I've heard up until now do not involve televised formality or even the presence of the much-hallowed John Bell Chapel podium. The more I'm able to personally connect with a speech, the deeper each word is carved in my receptors. For many of you, the tradition of congregating and listening to a chapel speech was your first introduction to seeing into the colors of a close friend or familiar face. And for those of you who missed my Christmas time chapel story, spoken from this very podium, I have been subjected to many speeches since I was a baby. From birth, my family and I would gather at my grandparents' large dining room table every holiday. Before any of us could take the plunge into the feast that lay before us, my grandpa would deliver his iconic speech. With only a few seconds of thought, I realized as to why these speeches were so memorable. Not only would the speeches ramble for up to 20 minutes, but my grandpa would overtly roar his words down the table, filling the whole house with wisdom. Apart from the obvious, the real reason as to why every one of his inspiring speeches still ring in my ears today is because my grandpa wasn't just the witty, generous man in his 80s. He was, and always will be, a mentor in all regards. Good morning to my friends, peers, faculty, and four of my current mentors, Mom, Dad, Aunt Jill, and Uncle Ron. Today, as my introduction may have alluded to, I'll be talking about the relationships I built with my mentors, along with other scattered themes that have shaped me into my current self. For those of you who know me well, I like to tell stories. In particular, I like to share memories of my very eccentric family members. And as I feel no chapel speech is complete without a moving anecdote, here I go. From a young age, my grandpa and I had a special bond. Being the cool grade 6 concert bandit that I was struggling to get to school at the shockingly early 7:30 practice. My grandpa, always willing to spend time with his 20-something grand and great-grandchildren, willingly obliged. Every Wednesday morning he would arrive, warming his car with classical music. The car rides were legendary. Of all the probing questions he could ask in the 5-minute journey, my grandpa, always checking in, would go for the classic, "Do you need any beverage money?" Being 11, I was fascinated to see the generation gap and would gladly accept, using it for more responsible purposes, of course. While my grandpa lived a low-key, private latter end of his life, stories from his heyday hold true to his mentor status. I fondly remember coming across a newspaper article discussing how my grandpa had his second of 8 children and bought his second and third newspaper all on the same day, at the age of 23, making him one of the youngest publishers in Canadian history. All the while, his health was deteriorating. In late February last year, I was given news that things were not looking hopeful. It was a Wednesday night, and my grandpa had been hospitalized for a few days. I couldn't handle parting so abruptly with one of my most inspirational figures. I can remember being advised by my mom not to visit the hospital. In a way, she was trusting her maternal instinct to protect her young. However, I took an alternate path, trusted my own instinct, and drove down for a memorable visit. When I arrived at the hospital, I can still picture my grandpa lying in bed motionlessly, but showing immediate energy and excitement when I entered his room. Our conversation was simple, but lasted with boundless impact. He said, with commanding presence, "They'll never take me alive." To clarify, if these words sound familiar, I assure you, my grandpa didn't steal these words off of Tupac. He was more of a bagpipes fan. And with that, my grandpa shook my hand with great strength, and we parted ways. Trusting your instinct requires a considerable amount of courage and commitment. To contextualize, that visit to the hospital was the last time I ever spoke with my grandpa, and has proven to be my proudest moment of staying true to my senses. In following what I naturally felt, I took on a perspective contrary to that of my mother's, which, if you ask either of my parents, illustrates a very common cause of arguments in the Hackney household. And I will gladly attest to the fact that I've nearly caused all of them. Even if you ask my fellow gentlemen of Pole's House, when I hold a conflicting viewpoint, I unavoidably produce what some would call a grotesque scrunch on my face, making my views very obvious. You may ask, why would I willingly disagree with the people around me? Perhaps I was tired of hearing psychologists equate my age group to sheep following an inescapable herd. Indeed, I have been discerning since a very young age, but have only recently captured the style of thought in words, informed optimism. This is my response to the acclaimed phenomenon, irrational exuberance. I've never been a supporter of unshielded positivity, but still don't want to be compared to the likes of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Being an informed optimist bears some of the greatest virtues life has to offer. I recently read an article in Psychology Today written by Dr. Robert Leahy, clinical professor of psychology at the Weill Cornell Medical School. His article, entitled, wait for it, "The Dangers of Optimism," concludes with the claim that, quote, optimism can kill you. It is my belief that by being informed and as rational as possible, you're more than likely to dodge this predicament. I am very fortunate to have been raised to never take things at face value. The simple principle of always questioning what's presented to me has been carefully reinforced by two of my greatest mentors, my Aunt Jill and Uncle Ron. It would seem that for as long as I've been able to speak, my aunt and uncle have been engaging me in adult conversation. While topics have ranged from the popular to highly controversial, the time they have spent with me giving advice and offering alternate solutions has shown me the value in connecting with the people around me. While I wouldn't say I'm a particularly religious person, some of the most powerful words I've ever heard were delivered to me by the priest in my elementary school. In one of his unconventional sermons, he spoke out, "You don't have to like everyone, but you do have to love them." This follows the notion that while I may dislike someone's views, granted, I may dislike the person, it is our humane responsibility to respect and accept each other, building on the classic, love your neighbor as yourself, which I'm sure you've all heard before. This quote was especially important for me to understand, as I didn't used to be the person of relatively good character that I am today. I used to be sly, deceptive, and crafty, always conjuring up plans against my classmates. It was all in good fun, but I needed an inspirational mentor to share some long overdue wisdom. Regardless of where you come from, right now, in this very moment, you are surrounded by very unique individuals, offering diverse characteristics. Each of you holds the free will to choose whether or not you will connect with one another. And given that February's theme is responsibility, it is essential that each of you pursue what your surroundings have to offer. More so, what do you have to offer your surroundings? Failing to consider either thought would be downright irresponsible. A mentor, in my mind, is anyone that has the courage to awaken you and the insightfulness to keep you awake. And though family can be a great resource for guidance, some of your best mentors are currently sitting beside, behind, or in front of you. These mentors don't have to be the brightest, most talented, or funniest. They just have to, as I've heard from my uncle, have a strong moral compass. They could be the very loyal OWL editor who stays up agonizingly late to strengthen your paper, or that one selfless senior one who commits his or herself to the couches by the dining hall to oversee a mountain of backpacks. In other words, a mentor doesn't have to be that glowing idol who showers you with wisdom and life-changing lessons. I feel like given this month's theme, it is my responsibility to begin the second half of the year with a challenge. And I'm afraid to tell you there is knowledge and application required. Looking from a broader perspective here at Appleby, I have to be honest. While we thrive in a phenomenal environment, it would be irresponsible on my part to say that Appleby is perfect. It is my challenge to you, my friends, my peers, to widen your lenses, connect with your neighbors, and most importantly, hold yourself to the standard that you deserve. Hopefully by now, I've been able to connect you with my philosophy in life, what I follow to achieve balance. Personal success can't be formulated, but from my angle, by seeking connections with mentors around you, trusting your instincts, and being an informed optimist, you'll find yourself in a good place. I have been awoken many times by the closest people in my network of family and friends, so before you fall asleep yourself, be insightful, be responsive, be aware, just be. Now, with great strength, will you all please rise and sing hymn 352, Amazing Grace.